Lonely CEO Millionaire reveals incredible connection. You won't believe what happens in one night. Nathan stood in his luxurious mansion, the shadows of his past whispering louder than the echoes of his lavish life. A millionaire at 50, the walls he built around himself felt more like a prison. His achievements, while impressive on paper, felt hollow. Once brimming with laughter and warmth, the mansion now only resonated with silence, and loneliness nagged at him like a relentless ache. Each day, he sacrificed precious moments, relationships. His family was a mere memory drifting in the distance, making his success feel less like a triumph and more like a choice he regretted. An unexpected invitation landed on his polished marble counter, a community gathering at the library of his childhood. It struck a nerve. The warm, nostalgic memories collided with the stark loneliness that suffocated him. The scent of musty books and the laughter of children flooded his mind as he stepped inside on that chilly autumn evening. Yet he felt like an outsider in his own past. The welcoming smiles of old friends and mentors felt like a ghostly reminder of who he once was and who he had become. With each laugh shared, the contrast was unbearable. The joy surrounding him starkly illuminated the emptiness lurking in his heart. Before he could unravel these conflicting emotions, whispers of discontent about wealth and privilege began to circulate among the attendees. "What right does he have to be here?" echoed in the hushed tones behind him. Nathan's internal battle intensified. Was he now part of the problem? The social prejudices he'd always ignored during his ascent became a looming shadow over the otherwise joyous gathering, mirroring the fracture in his own family connections. Caught in this web of contradictions, he found solace in a conversation with Ella, the librarian. Her passion and determination to save the library stoked a flame in Nathan, burning away the layers of corporate strategy that had long clouded his judgment. Over cups of coffee, hours slipped by unnoticed as they shared dreams and aspirations, revealing a side of himself he thought long forgotten. But fate had different plans. Just as he began to rediscover a spark of purpose, dark clouds gathered. News broke of a scandal involving the library, rumors flared, and the community's support dwindled as quickly as it had sparked. Nathan felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. Did he want to protect his influence, or did he want to protect the essence of what made his past valuable? The security of his wealth felt fragile against the integrity he yearned to embrace. Unease gnawed at him, the stakes were escalating, and with each passing moment, he recalled the family values he once carried close to his heart, values now overshadowed by cold ambition. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Now, in the chilling grip of uncertainty, Nathan felt paralyzed, desperately torn between loyalty to the community that nurtured him and the fear of what his involvement might cost him. Tears of frustration swelled in his eyes as he questioned the very foundation of his successes. Would he turn his back on his childhood home, allowing the tide of fear to dictate his actions? Or would he rise to the challenge, risking his empire to stand by Ella and the community he had forsaken? As the night thickened, Nathan realized he was racing against more than just societal backlash. He was staring down the demons of his own creation. The choice loomed ahead, dark and unyielding, each moment stretching into an eternity as he stood at the precipice of his past and future, neck deep in anguish. Where would he land? Resolved to confront his fears, Nathan took a deep breath. His heart raced as he exited the library that night, the chill of the autumn air refreshing, yet starkly harsh against his perspiring skin. 100 thoughts tumbled through his mind like leaves in the wind, each one pressing him to choose between the comfort of his wealth and the innate desire to connect with those he once cherished. Driving through the familiar streets of his childhood, Nathan couldn't help but reflect on how far he had strayed from his original intentions. It had always been about making a difference, not just for himself, but for others. His aspirations had shifted so seamlessly into greed and ambition that they felt unrecognizable. The disconnect grieved him, yet within that pain lay a resolve that began to take shape. The next morning, he gathered layers of courage as he headed to his office, a stark contrast to the warmth of the library. But the oppressive air of corporate life weighed heavily on him. Nathan realized that he had a decision to make. He could either let the waves of fear and doubt sweep away his moment of clarity, or use it as a trampoline, launching himself into a purpose-driven endeavor. Sitting behind his oversized desk, a monolithic symbol of his empire, Nathan began to draft a plan. A sudden glimmer of inspiration struck him. The library could thrive if he applied the same strategic thinking that had made him successful in business. He imagined fundraising initiatives, community engagement, and partnerships that could not only restore the library's image, but strengthen its foundation within the town. It was a struggle against the tide of skepticism that had followed him there. Nathan pored over his ideas, drafting proposals and calculating potential outreach. He could sense the stirrings of a dormant drive deep within him, sparking a mix of excitement and fear. With fresh conviction, he decided to reach out to Ella, seeking her insight and support. She had breathed life into his purpose, and her passion resonated with his own desires. As he navigated through the day's meetings, he felt an unfamiliar sense of urgency, pulling him toward the library once more. Each opportunity to discuss mundane corporate matters, juxtaposed with the weight of his newfound mission, felt insipid. He was bursting to share his vision, yet felt uncharacteristically vulnerable. Would his colleagues mock him, dismiss his ideas as trivial in the face of true business? When he finally reached out to Ella that afternoon, his fingers trembled slightly over the keyboard. He clicked send, the email disappearing into the void of cyberspace, yet carrying a part of him with it. He knew that sharing his thoughts could invite scrutiny, forcing him to face not only the external backlash, but also the internal doubts that threatened to suffocate this budding purpose. Hours passed as he awaited her response, his thoughts racing between excitement and dread. Just as despair threatened to take hold, an email notification popped up on his screen. Ella's words poured forth, teeming with enthusiasm and support, igniting a fire within him. She believed in his vision. However, the path ahead would not be without its obstacles. As he prepared to face his colleagues and instigate change, Nathan realized he would have to confront the very foundation of his success, a haunting specter in his life. He stood at the precipice, once more staring into the darkness of uncertainty, knowing deep down that he was ready to head toward the light. But as he turned his gaze toward the reflection staring back at him from the glass walls of his office, a nagging thought lingered. Could he truly make this right? The moment of truth was approaching, and he sensed that the fallout from this decision could lead to either a new beginning or an ending he could hardly bear. What would transpire when he brought his revelations to a corporate boardroom, filled with those who had merely admired his riches? The time had come to face the music and uncover the truth about himself. As Nathan stepped into the boardroom the following day, his stomach churned with a mix of anticipation and dread. The polished glass door slid shut behind him with an unsettling finality, leaving him with the air of expectation hanging heavily above the gathering of executives. Each familiar face was a reminder of the path he had chosen, one that had consistently rewarded ambition over empathy. Now, he needed to pivot, to shift the paradigm that had governed his life for so long. Sitting at the head of the table, Nathan surveyed the faces he's known for years, the ambitious, the calculating, the indifferent. He could almost predict their initial reactions, curiosity overshadowed by skepticism. They were accustomed to discussions centered around profit margins and market shares, not the heart-wrenching plea he was about to deliver. Would they understand his passion, or would they see it as a weakness? Clearing his throat, Nathan began to speak, infusing his tone with the weight of conviction he had cultivated over the past few days. Today, I want to talk about something different, something meaningful. I want to inspire change, not just within our company, but also in our community. The words tumbled from his lips, each syllable laced with an intensity that surged through him. He laid out his vision for the library. Ideas raced like wildfire: fundraising events, mentorship programs, a potential partnership for educational initiatives, each one fueled by the desire to provide a platform for learning and growth. He noted the widening eyes around the table. Perhaps he hadn't lost them just yet. But as he looked deeper into their expressions, he realized his vulnerability had revealed a fissure. They were intrigued, yet he could sense the cautious appraisal lurking beneath. Voices crackled like static when he finished, the buzz of disbelief weaving its way through the room. "You want us to invest in a library?" Roger, one of the more pragmatic executives, was the first to vocalize what many were likely thinking. "Yes, I do," Nathan asserted, feeling the heat of disbelief press against him. "It's more than a library. It's about reinforcing our community, restoring something that provides knowledge to those who need it." Laughter erupted, and with it came Nathan's flaring insecurities. He had exposed a raw nerve of truth within himself, but quickly felt the old pull of self-doubt. He had crossed a threshold, a Charlie Brown in a room full of Snoopies. Was this really the path to redemption, or merely a futile attempt to soften the ice around his heart? "Knowledge is essential in today's world," he pressed on, adopting his best persuasive tone. "We stand by our motto, leadership through innovation. What's more innovative than elevating people through education?" Silence rolled over the room. He watched faces shift, calculations weighing against his idealistic narrative. Suddenly, he caught a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes, but just as quickly it was smothered by the instinctive drive for profit. On shaky ground, Nathan felt the weight of his ambition crushing down again. He realized that his own ambition had long ignored the power of connection that lay dormant beneath his polished exterior, a visceral understanding that his colleagues sought only the safe harbor of fiscal gains. But now, in the face of their glances of doubt, he understood that the real challenge was not in persuading them, but in persisting against their disbelief, against the urge within himself to abandon an audacious idea for safety. He had to dig deeper. "What if we could forge a legacy beyond ROI?" he proposed, pushing the envelope further, aligning their profit-driven mindset with the compelling power of fostering community. He leaned into the forthcoming discomfort, prepared even for resistance. Still, the question loomed: could he conjure enough resolve to uplift others while navigating the corporate quagmire he had made? As discussions flourished, voices bolstered, Nathan couldn't shake the lingering concern. Despite their cautious curiosity, would they allow this unconventional ambition to thrive, or would they bury it like so many dreams before? With a smirk tugging at the corners of his lips, realization set in. This was just the beginning. Amid the swirling doubts and invigorating discussions, Nathan's resolve solidified. He had sparked a flicker of hope, but would it ignite a blazing fire or flicker out in the face of indifference? As he caught his breath, he knew the critical decision lay ahead, and an unexpected confrontation awaited on the horizon. Who would emerge to challenge his resolve next? The boardroom buzzed with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue, an atmosphere that mirrored Nathan's own internal conflict. As discussions unfolded, he sensed the familiar tug-of-war within him, a blend of ambition, vulnerability, and a desperate desire to create something meaningful. Nathan observed his colleagues as they engaged in conversations, some articulating counterarguments, while others hesitated, eyeing potential pitfalls. Each voice contributed to the fray, yet beneath the corporate jargon lay something deeper, a question that swallowed comfort and safety. What was the cost of ambition? He had ventured into uncharted territory, and with each passing moment, the stakes escalated. Could he carve out a path for change amidst the relentless churn of profit-driven objectives? Or would he become a martyr to his own ideals? As the dialogue simmered, Nathan caught himself reflecting on the very essence of leadership. In his relentless pursuit of success, had he unknowingly shackled himself from the true mission at hand? A mission that humanized the numbers and brought humanity into leadership. "Let's talk about the bottom line," Roger interjected, reeling Nathan back to reality. There it was, the familiar reminder of their purpose: profit, growth, and dominance in the marketplace. But Nathan steeled himself, the edges of uncertainty sharpening into clarity. "Bottom lines can and should extend beyond what's reflected on a balance sheet," he countered, his voice gaining strength. "The impact we make can resonate beyond fiscal results. Imagine the testimonials, the stories of lives changed." He felt the energy shift ever so slightly. A few heads nodded, and even Roger's expression seemed to flicker, if just for an instant. A birth of possibility, a notion that resonated within him, kindling a renewed sense of purpose. Yet in the same breath, self-doubt gnawed at him. What if his invitation to a broader vision was seen as naive? His heart raced as he scanned their faces, searching for signs of acceptance. The clock ticked with relentless precision, the digital numbers casting his chances like a shadow across the table. Doubt morphed into a driving urgency. He couldn't let this moment slip, not when he stood on the brink of a revelation that could alter everything. He leaned forward slightly, an involuntary act that showcased both his commitment and vulnerability. This isn't just about investing in a library. It's about investing in the very fabric of our society, crafting a legacy rooted in knowledge, resilience, and enlightenment. It's about progress we can be proud of. Nathan noticed a shift, a subtle movement among his peers. Eyes lingered on him, brows knit in contemplation. Could he hold their focus long enough to shift their perspectives? He could feel their walls faintly quivering, and the thrilling notion of dismantling that fortress spurred him onward. As the dialogue continued, Nathan attempted to be thoroughly strategic. Anecdotes spun into persuasive narratives, which resonated with a few. A young executive voiced support, recalling her own transformative experience in a library. The flow of conversation took on an electric pulse, pushing through layers of doubt and sparking questions that delved deeper than mere figures. But as the momentum began to swell, he sensed a storm brewing under the surface. Roger's brows knitted tighter, his skepticism returning, ready to counter. The palpable tension twisted like a knife, and Nathan knew that whatever was coming next could tip the balance of their budding conversation. He found himself stuck between elation and apprehension. Would this moment of revelation mark his ascendance into true leadership, or would it lead to disillusionment? The stakes were impossibly high. With a heartbeat steadying into determination, Nathan locked eyes with Roger and braced for the possible confrontation that threatened his aspirations. He might have ignited a spark, but would he extinguish it just as quickly? As the wave of voices rose around him, a single question hung in the air, urging him forward. Could he withstand the impending challenge that might define him? The air thickened with anticipation as Roger cleared his throat, a precursor to the inevitable clash that Nathan felt brewing. "Nathan," he began, his tone laced with condescension, "I admire your passion, but we cannot ignore the reality we operate within. Your vision, while noble, risks diverting us from our primary mission, revenue." Each word reverberated against Nathan's resolve. Yet instead of retreating, he stood taller. He had faced dismissive criticism before, but never when the stakes were so personal. "What if I told you," he countered, "that an investment like this can directly enhance our bottom line by fostering loyalty and community relations? Isn't that worth considering?" Roger's eyes narrowed, a predator sizing up its prey. "And if it fails? If we end up spending millions on an ideal that may not yield immediate returns, that's a risk I'm not willing to take. Nathan felt a flush of heat creep up his neck as silent murmurs darted around the boardroom. The specter of failure loomed large, and self-doubt whispered insidiously. Was he just a naive dreamer, blind to the harsh realities of corporate life cycles? Roger, every successful venture began as a risk, he pressed forward, determination threading through his voice. The libraries, the communities, they become testimonies of success, breeding a new generation that could transform the marketplace. Think of the narratives that evolve when we invest in ideas rather than just numbers. Isn't legacy worth something? He could see a flicker of hesitation in the eyes of some colleagues. Conversations around the table, once tightly wound in critique, began to shift, opening small cracks in the fortress Roger had forged. Yet he knew it wasn't enough. A strategic victory could only be tasted if he could deliver the final blow to inertia. But the temperature in the room was rising. Roger had not yet conceded, his fierce gaze locked onto Nathan as if trying to burn the conviction into ashes. Legacy won't pay salaries, he retorted, venom ricocheting in the air. What you're proposing is grand in theory, but fraught with risks that could doom us. Suddenly, Nathan's thoughts spiraled, racing back to his life before this relentless pursuit of ambition. His childhood library, an oasis of possibility amidst uncertainty, flooded his mind. The seed of knowledge planted there had borne fruit in the form of his vision. This wasn't just a project, it was a calling. Roger, Nathan began, softer now but no less determined. Helping others isn't just a side business, it's a core principle that can revolutionize our identity as leaders. What if this endeavor fosters innovation, new products, fresh perspectives that lead to growth we haven't even begun to imagine? The quiet in the room expanded, an unspoken challenge hanging palpably. Nathan took a breath, focusing on the palpable undercurrents of change, however tenuous. Could he really shift the definition of success for himself and his colleagues? As he felt their attention teetering on the brink, he pushed past the horizon of what he'd previously considered acceptable. This can be our moment, an inflection point that redefines how we see our legacy as a company and as individuals. Around the table, expressions varied. Some seemed stirred, others still engaged in cautious contemplation. He could practically sense the wheels turning, and yet the fight felt far from over. Just as he surged with optimism, Roger cut back sharply. You think one ideal can change the way we do business? It's not that simple, Nathan. You're underestimating the complexities of commercial success. For a beat, Nathan hesitated, dissecting Roger's skepticism through the lens of fear and resistance. He couldn't retract now, not when the path to his personal metamorphosis lay so clearly ahead. Complexity does not equate to inaction, Nathan declared, a new steadiness anchoring his resolve. He felt both vulnerable and emboldened, intertwined with the ambition that had led him here. As he awaited Roger's retort, the room thickened with thick, electric silence. Nathan had become a mirror, reflecting what lay ahead, both heroic and terrifying. A confrontation with self-doubt and a challenge to reshape their understanding of leadership. And then the moment arrived, a moment etched in tension, shifting focus from him to the entire board. Would this be the beginning of a new narrative, or would he walk away with nothing but echoes of his ideals? He had faced many battles in this boardroom, but none cut so deeply. Would he rise to the occasion or find himself buried under layers of expectation? The battle for his vision and identity had only just begun. The room held its breath, caught in a tension that felt both surreal and electrifying. Nathan's heart thundered in his chest, the stakes riding higher than they ever had before. He could feel the eyes of his colleagues probing him, weighing the balance of idealism against practicality. Failure was no longer an abstract concept, but a looming specter, daring him to retreat into the safety of silence. Let's assume you're right, Nathan. Roger finally broke through the silence, his tone slipping from disdain to feigned curiosity. Let's assume this grand vision of yours can yield long-term returns. Can you guarantee that initial investment won't cripple us in the short term? The question hung in the air, offering Nathan a window, a crack through which he could either soar or fall back into obscurity. In that instant, he instructed himself to breathe deeply, channeling everything he had learned, everything he had fought for. Guaranteed? No, he admitted, feeling the words rush out with a clarity he hadn't expected. But no venture worth pursuing comes with guarantees. Consider the types of risks we consistently take, the products that flop, the markets that fail to expand. We've thrived on calculated risks before. Roger scoffed, crossing his arms tightly over his chest. This isn't a bold new product launch, Nathan. It's a philosophical gamble that could jeopardize everything we've worked for. Philosophical, Nathan echoed, surprised that such a dismissive term could surface in the conversation. This isn't philosophy, it's strategic adaptation. We have to allow ourselves to evolve. Markets are changing fast. If we don't change with them, we risk losing our relevance. People want to engage with companies that stand for something. The murmurs grew louder, momentum swelling behind Nathan's words. Just as the hope flickered anew, Roger pierced through once more, voice sharper than before. And what if our philosophical shift is met with public indifference? How will you sell that to our shareholders? The flash of worry danced through Nathan's mind, doubt creeping in once again. He needed to deflect the fear, redirect the conversation away from the hypothetical consequences of failure. You mentioned shareholders, Nathan said, voice firm, adrenaline surging. But if we bring value to our community while staying anchored in our core competencies, the shareholders will benefit long-term. We can frame this not as charity, but as a smart business strategy, building a loyal customer base resilient to economic shifts. The eyes around the boardroom began to dart between Nathan and Roger, caught between their intense disagreement, as if it were an electric bolt sparking between two opposing forces. They were riled, engaged. Could this be a pivotal moment in Nathan's career? The thought invigorated him, but a familiar specter of doubt flared to life. What if he failed? What if the very framework he was building could collapse, taking with it the vision he held so dear? This wasn't just professional, it was personal. His mind drifted back to those formative years spent in the library, transforming dreams into strategies. He had never allowed himself to stand at the crossroads of fear without facing it head-on, pushing through the haze of uncertainty. A voice, hardened and dictated by reason, murmured within. Wasn't that the hallmark of leadership anyway? To confront, adapt, and challenge the very elements that sought to stifle progress. Let's entertain the worst-case scenario, Nathan said, an audacity surging within him. What happens if this doesn't work? We take the lessons learned. Don't you think that's just as valuable? Isn't it better for our company to demonstrate that we are willing to be vulnerable and investigate our mission on a deeper level? To show our teams that growth often comes from pain? For the first time, Nathan could see diverse expressions laying the groundwork for collective contemplation. This was no longer just a debate. It felt like a genesis of awareness brewing among them. His heart raced, emboldened by the small but meaningful shift as he pressed on. Imagine the conversation starter we could ignite, a chance for us to align our growth strategy with something deeper, not just to exist, but to thrive amidst chaos. As he spoke, Nathan felt the undeniable tension shift. The room was awakening, crackling with a newfound urgency. But could he take the reins firmly enough to steer this energy toward a successful resolution? With resolve strengthened and doubts beginning to recede, Nathan sensed a wild possibility lurking ahead. But first, he needed to dismantle Roger's resistance entirely. He needed to seize this moment. The stakes were higher than mere corporate image. They were a journey of self-discovery for himself and those standing before him. Would this be the defining pivot in how he would navigate his career and identity going forward? With every decision amplifying the echo of his past, Nathan braced for what might come next. The ground was shifting beneath him, and the height of the challenge was beckoning. The moment hung thick in the air, electric with uncertainty. Nathan felt the turn of their perceptions, yet the persistent weight of apprehension pressed down. As Roger shifted in his seat, casting a pensive glare across the table, Nathan recognized the urgency that coursed through him. This wasn't merely a debate, it was a crucible that would forge his identity as a leader. "Have any of you thought about what it means to actually lead?" he asked, his voice steady. "To inspire a team, not just to chase profits, but to pursue a purpose that aligns with our core values. If we lose sight of that, what's the point? We might as well close up shop." Whether it was the sincerity in his tone or the passion igniting within his words, a flicker of respect ignited among some of his colleagues. But Roger remained resilient, his skepticism a barrier Nathan would have to break. "You're coming at this from an idealistic perspective," Roger rebutted, unyielding. "What you propose risks the foundation of this company. It isn't all about engagement or community. These are terms that sound nice, but numbers don't lie." Here was the crux. Nathan realized he wasn't just battling Roger's perspective, but a very deep-rooted corporate mentality. It wasn't merely a fight for an idea, it was a confrontation with a legacy of thinking that had propelled the company forward while simultaneously shackling its potential. "Numbers can be driven by meaningful narratives," Nathan stated, his momentum locking into place. "If we embed our strategies with authentic values, we'll create a narrative that speaks to our customers. Engagement will follow." The boardroom seemed like a two-sided battlefield, with Nathan standing resolute among a sea of skeptical gazes, his heart thumping in synchronization with his rapidly evolving convictions. He felt the faces of his colleagues shift, some intrigued, others still skeptical, yet all were grappling with the weight of his challenge. "But what about accountability, Nathan?" Roger interjected, leaning forward. "How do you hold your vision accountable? If we chase this dream and it goes south, we'll be left with nothing but theories and good intentions." Nathan felt a surge of frustration but quelled it. Every word Roger spat was fuel to his own fire. "We establish milestones, metrics that measure engagement and impact," he said, keeping his tone measured. "We build the criteria for what success looks like in this shifting paradigm. This isn't about tossing everything we know aside, it's about integrating who we are as a business into our vision." He could feel small murmurings of agreement scattering within the room. It fed his resolve, driving him to push harder. "We will innovate where others have hesitated, transforming setbacks into opportunities. Yes, failure might be on the table, but it can be crucial for growth." The intensity shifted almost palpably. Expressions morphed from passive disinterest into engaged contemplation. Nathan felt like he was standing on the precipice of something new. He had started as just another player in a corporate machine, but had evolved into an agent of change. Then Nathan realized it. This discourse was reflective of his internal conflict. The resistance he faced from Roger was an echo of his own doubts. If he was to succeed, he needed to fully confront not only Roger, but also the fears that lay beneath the surface. "Imagine a world where our company is seen not just as a business, but as a beacon of ethical leadership," he said, his voice strengthening. "We redefine success on our terms, not theirs." The finality of his statement lingered, charging the atmosphere with a heavy anticipation. Nathan had found a new rhythm. His voice, once shaky, now rang with conviction, a melodic crescendo echoing through the room. The very ground beneath him was shifting, but he was learning to ride the waves instead of fearing them. However, just as he could feel the pull towards victory, a shadow of uncertainty loomed ahead. What if they decided to double down on Roger's perspective? What if he faced an uprising amongst colleagues who were unwilling to embrace this change? Nathan steeled himself, aware that he had come too far to back down now. As he locked eyes with Roger once more, Nathan understood that this was only the beginning of a greater battle. The moment was ripe for courage, but it would require more than just words. He had to uncover strategies he hadn't yet tapped into to secure his vision and himself within this complex system. And deep down, the inquiry lingered. Would he truly be able to lead this change, or would he risk becoming part of the very resistance he sought to dismantle? The deliberations within the boardroom had left Nathan electrified and exhausted all at once. As the meeting adjourned, he felt the weight of skepticism still clinging to the air like a fog that refused to lift. Departing the room, he resolved to take stock of the shifting currents, both within himself and among his colleagues. It was clear that mere words would not suffice to navigate this complex landscape. He was faced with an imperative, not only to change minds, but to transform hearts. Walking down the cold, fluorescent-lit corridor, Nathan replayed the confrontation in his mind. Roger's hardened skepticism echoed in his thoughts, amplifying the doubts he believed he'd conquered. What if this was not just a fight against Roger's outlook, but a reflection of his own fears about becoming a leader? The realization turned his stomach. He had always admired leaders who could rally people, inspire change, and yet here he was, paralyzed by the same resistance he sought to overcome. Pulling himself away from the whirlpool of uncertainty, Nathan decided to lean into the discomfort. He recalled how taking risks had been ingrained in him throughout his life. Challenges had shaped his resilience. He made his way to his office, the space filled with artifacts of his past successes. The framed photographs of moments celebrated, awards received, milestones achieved, now seemed distant, reminders of the individualistic path he had once traveled. But leadership demanded more than personal accolades. It demanded connection. He had to forge alliances, create a coalition of belief around his vision. Suddenly, Nathan felt emboldened. It wasn't enough to merely advocate for change. He had to embody it. He needed to galvanize support, reach out to his colleagues, not as a distant figure, but as someone ready to listen and collaborate. Nathan reached for his phone and began sending out informal invitations for coffee meetings, aiming to connect with each board member one-on-one. He wanted to unravel their genuine concerns and gather their insights. As he thumbed through his contacts, he noted with resolve that Roger would be first on his list. This was his moment to demonstrate vulnerability as a strength, something Roger may not expect from him. Days passed in rapid succession, each conversation a step toward building a bridge over the chasm that separated his idealism from the entrenched corporate mentality. To his surprise, many of his colleagues shared unvoiced concerns about feeling stifled under the company's profit-driven ethos. They craved an environment where they could tap into their creativity, a shared vision they hadn't thought possible. Nathan began to feel that the potential for change wasn't merely a dream, but a real possibility, fueled by voices ready to be heard. As he gathered insights and inspiration from those meetings, Nathan's understanding deepened. The problem wasn't limited to Roger's resistance. It spread throughout the company's culture like a stubborn weed. He began to see his new role as that of a gardener, nurturing the seeds of trust and openness that began to sprout among his peers. One afternoon, while sharing coffee with another board member, Clara, she leaned in and said, "You know, Nathan, I've seen what you're trying to do, but change starts small. What if we hosted a workshop to discuss our values and align them with our business model, something hands-on?" The suggestion ignited a spark within him. Workshops were precisely the kind of collaborative experience he needed to ground the abstract concepts he was proposing. Clara's initiative became the catalyst for Nathan's next move, and he felt the thrill of realization wash over him. He needed to bring together the dissenters and the believers, not just to listen to ideas, but to enact them together. By now, he could feel the pulsing momentum building inside him. The path toward cultivating a culture of purpose-driven engagement seemed clearer than ever. However, in the back of his mind lurked the unspoken question: would Roger remain an obstacle, or could he be drawn into this initiative as well? Venturing into the unknown had never been Nathan's forte, but the challenge was staring at him, unmistakable and enticing. This was his chance, his opportunity to confront not just Roger, but the deeper ingrained beliefs that could either uplift or dismantle the foundation he aimed to build. His heart raced at the thought of confronting Roger once more. The moment of truth was approaching, and with newfound determination, Nathan realized the time had come to face the very doubt that threatened to unravel his vision. Nathan stood at the threshold of uncertainty, his anticipation hanging in the air like static before a storm. He had initiated a new path, one armed with vulnerability and the earnest desire for connection. But would it disarm Roger? The workshop was scheduled for next week, and now was the time to invite Roger into the fold. A nagging voice asked if he had the strength to face the director known for his unyielding cynicism. He was on the verge of second-guessing himself when he decided to lean into that moment of fear. The blessings would follow the risk. Today was too crucial to contemplate retreat. Nathan found himself staring at the schedule on his office wall, the calendar blocked with notes about the gathering. The vision he had painted now seemed surreal, a coloring book waiting for life to be added. Taking a deep breath, he drafted an email to Roger, one that struck a balance between assertiveness and openness. "I would appreciate your insights," he wrote. "I believe we have the opportunity to shape our future together in a meaningful way." He hit send, immediately feeling the rush of vulnerability course through him. This was monumental. He was inviting Roger to join a journey he had initially perceived as a solitary trek. As the days grew shorter, Nathan prepared for the upcoming workshop, not just logistically, but emotionally. He envisioned how Roger might respond. Would he scoff, dismiss the idea as futile? Or perhaps, just perhaps, the man might surprise him. Each meeting had added a layer of insight, and with Clara's backing, Nathan felt equipped to lay the groundwork for a shared narrative rather than just a corporate lecture. The atmosphere on workshop day was electrifying, yet thick with the tension of anticipated resistance. Colleagues arrived, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Clara set the mood, encouraging discussions about values and vision, while Nathan facilitated, guiding the group as he had envisioned months ago. But then Roger arrived, behind the crowd, a specter that seemed to drain the warmth from the room. The jovial exchanges and laughter dwindled to hushed tones as eyes turned toward the imposing figure. Nathan's heartbeat quickened, an urging reminder that the moment of confrontation was upon him. Roger settled in a chair, arms crossed, surveying the room with a critical gaze. "What's the point of this?" he addressed the gathering, a razor of doubt slicing through the hopeful atmosphere. Determined not to cower under that critical stare, Nathan drew a deep breath and answered, "The point is to reconstruct our culture, a culture that prioritizes creativity and connection, aligning our purpose with our work. Your voice is essential, Roger." A hush fell over the room, the tension palpable. Silence replaced the initial enthusiasm, and the weight of unaddressed conflict bore down heavily. In that charged moment, Nathan felt a flicker of challenge rise within him, a hidden potential he had never fully acknowledged. He wasn't just the orchestrator of this workshop, he was powerful enough to stand resolutely in the face of adversity, to call forth authenticity even amid skepticism. What if our goals could align not just with profit, but with who we are as individuals? He continued, eyes locked on Roger, a silent acknowledgement of the escalation between them. How could we reshape our company and truly engage? Suddenly, the air around them shifted. In the moment of conflict and challenge, Nathan discovered a latent competency within, a capacity for leadership he had not tapped into before. He didn't just challenge Roger, he engaged him, beckoning the board into a dialogue about deeper values. Roger opened his mouth as if to respond, but instead revealed nothing through expression, cultivating an enigmatic intensity. Nathan braced himself. Everything depended on Roger's reply. This was just the beginning of an escalating confrontation, and Nathan knew that before the workshop concluded, the truth would either begin to blossom or surely combust. As the minutes passed into a sort of charged vacuum, Nathan realized he was at a turning point. Would Roger's response unfurl the potential for genuine engagement, or send Nathan retreating back to the confines of his self-doubt? The pivotal moment had arrived, and as Nathan narrowed his focus on Roger, he sensed the profound implications about to unfold. He brewed with anticipation, filtering through his resolve. But even as he stood ready for confrontation, encircled by echoes of hope and fear, he couldn't shake the feeling that their discourse would unveil more than mere business strategies. It could expose the very essence of who they were. As the workshop progressed, Nathan remained acutely aware of the palpable tension that wove through the room, suffused with collective expectation. Roger's silence, heavy with critique, felt almost conspiratorial. Moments stretched awkwardly as Nathan searched for the words to dismantle the barriers of doubt surrounding his colleague. "Roger," Nathan said, overtly inviting engagement, "this is your chance to contribute to something that might reshape our identity, our legacy. We've all succeeded in financial metrics, but what does that really mean if we've lost what makes us human?" The challenge hung starkly in the air, and Nathan steeled himself, conscious that this confrontation could mark the crux of his journey. He had transformed from the lonely millionaire to a leader aiming for connection. Each day had reshaped him, propelling him towards a meaningful resolution. The only thing left was to confront Roger and any student of their outcomes together. Roger finally broke his silence. "I appreciate the sentiment, Nathan, but what you're proposing has no guaranteed outcomes. Our shareholders won't stand for it. They expect results, not idealism. This is a business." "And that's the very point, isn't it?" Nathan pressed, his conviction intensifying. "Business should transcend just mere numbers. It should foster a sense of purpose, a legacy that can withstand the tests of time. If we focus too heavily on short-term results, we risk losing our relevance. Isn't the company's reputation and trust built on more than just profit margins?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, stirring shades of contemplation among the attendees. Nathan's heart raced. This was the very risk he needed to take. To lead with a conviction unyielding was to expose himself to the possibility of failure, while simultaneously denying a pathway forward. He shifted his attention momentarily, drawing the other board members into the discussion. "Imagine if we championed initiatives that created real ties in our community. If we led projects that changed lives, not just incomes. That type of resonance creates not just a customer base, but a loyal family of supporters." Clearing his throat, he shifted gears, bolstered by the rising support in the room. "We can create partnerships with educational initiatives, community outreach programs, even progressive workshops that ignite the creativity of our employees. This is about building rather than just transacting. It's about fostering passionate engagement." The frequency in the room transformed subtly as he shared his vision. Not only was he presenting a strategy, he was standing for a movement, one that urged the change that repurposed power into community growth. Finally, a flicker of interest crossed Roger's face, swirling in a moment despite the stoic demeanor. "And you think you can gain lasting support from the community without immediate wins?" "Risk is intrinsic to progress," Nathan asserted, fueled by momentum. "The journey is rife with uncertainty, yet it's in that uncertainty we grow. We'll create pathways to measure our community impact and personal efficacy through workshops, mentorships, and programs that adapt as we learn." As the discussions flowed, Nathan could sense a change in the atmosphere. Conversations amidst board members shifted towards building towards collective goals. He had exposed their shared desire for belonging, their yearning for something greater than mere presence in the company. "We'll engage our teams in shaping these programs," Nathan continued, outwardly inspired. "Our employees will solidify their bonds with one another. They'll innovate beyond just fiscal stretches and, in turn, redefine value, an investment in ideas that can propel our business model beyond simply generating revenue." Slowly, eyes darted towards Roger. The CEO's demeanor betrayed a shift, albeit faint but perceptible. Nathan had struck at the heart of the fundamental conflict, spinning a narrative that beckoned both challenge and camaraderie, a call to action steeped not in the cold allure of profits, but in human connection. At that moment, Nathan glimpsed a flicker of hope within Roger's countenance, an intrigue born not of robust ideals, but rather an awakening. Perhaps, just perhaps, this looming confrontation could evolve into collaboration. The workshop fed into the currents of collaboration, and before long, Nathan sensed a burgeoning alliance, one forged within the bonds of shared recognition. They were embarking collectively on a journey that prioritized community integration into their professional psyche. That evening, as he returned home, Nathan felt an exhilarating sense of liberation wash over him. He had transformed not just professionally but personally. The lonely walls of his mansion no longer felt imposing, but a canvas upon which stories could be painted anew. He had conquered the deep-rooted fears of his past, navigating not only personal ambition, but an authentic calling that offered him profound fulfillment. No longer was he just a wealthy CEO shrouded in isolation. He stood transformed, a symbol of hope, courage, and reinvention. This introspective victory was tangible. He could feel the layers of isolation dissolve, replaced by a growing sense of connection to himself, to Roger, and to the community surrounding him. He had achieved something rare, the ability to translate his passion into action. Weeks later, the first community outreach event kicked off at the library. A constellation of faces, hope, and prospect excitedly blended through the aisles. Surrounded by laughter, Nathan understood the true essence: connection, engagement, and authentic purpose. This was only the beginning. As the sun dipped beyond the horizon, casting warmth across the gathering, Nathan stepped forward, inhaling deeply amidst the shared enthusiasm. He knew he had acquired not just professional growth, but a deeply rooted understanding that legacy was crafted by choices made, choices that led to meaningful connections, and with them, genuine fulfillment. Today, he stood proud, a reconceptualized leader with purpose, ready to forge an unbroken legacy of transformation. The mansion now echoed laughter once more. Nathan had reclaimed not just his home, but the essence of community, a triumphant reclamation of connection that transcended wealth. He had achieved what previously felt impossible: true personal achievement and profound growth, evidenced by the bonds he had established. Now, as he continued to pursue purpose, he felt ready to face whatever awaited him. Before we part, you need to subscribe now to this channel to follow the next chapter in incredible personal transformations. It's critical to ensure you don't miss out. Leave a like now if you felt touched by this journey, as it drives the algorithm and spreads inspiration further. Don't wait even one more second. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Nathan's transformation. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this story. It's your moment to show your support for authentic stories of overcoming challenges.